was an entrepreneur before I knew what it meant. So I don't even think I ever heard the word entrepreneur until much later in life. But I think I worked hard in the first few years after I got out of college. My first year at Taste Creek, we had a football coach there by the name of Roy Walton who built homes and things in the summertime and the off season. And I had a little bit of experience in framing houses and so on, so I decided I was going to help him. And he said, listen, he said, they had we were building duplexes right next to the field, and he said, you know, you ought to come up with $2,500 and you can have half of this duplex with me, and I can move in it. And when you moved into one and you were an owner, you could get a good loan, called owner-occupied loan, they call it. And so I did so, but I didn't have the $2,500. So he said, well, you got to go to the bank and borrow it. So I said, okay, that's the way that works. So I went to the bank, and First Security in those days, they had a young loan officer there by the name of Johnson, and he asked me, you know, well, you know, do you have any collateral? I said, I don't have any collateral. He said, well, do you have a lending history? You have something I can run a check on you? I said, no, I don't have any lending, no credit cards, no anything. So he said, well, I can't lend you $2,500, you know. He said, how much you make? I said, well, I make about $5,500 a year. He said, well, I'll lend you $500. I said, okay, I'll take it. And so I took it and signed the deal, and they give me a $500 check, and I cashed it and put the $500 in my sock drawer. And then so about 90 days later, I took it back to him and put a little money for interest in it, and I paid him off. And I said, well, do I have a history now? And he said, no, you don't have a history. That's not enough. So then I said, well, how much you lend me now? He said, well, I'll lend you $1,000. So I put it in my sock drawer, and I added interest to it, and I took it back to him and said, well, how's that? So anyway, I got up there one more time, and then finally he lent me the $2,500. So and that's when I owned my first piece of property. And I look back on that, and it was a learning experience for me because I knew nothing about banking, I knew nothing about lending, I knew, So, but I believe looking back on it that that's the best feeling I ever had is when I finally got to the point where I owned something in Lexington, Kentucky. Because I drove around here and looked at all these people who had money in these white rail fences and pretty girls driving convertibles and so on. And I think I decided I wanted to be this town. I wanted to be involved in it. So that was my first venture. I think when you come from where I came from, you really didn't have real estate ventures. People owned their homes is about all that they ever had, and most of them didn't own homes, and some of them rented from the company. It was a coal mining camp. And so, but I think what really got me thinking about trying to get involved in real estate was the fact that the way it worked on at duplex. You build a duplex and you finance it, and then you get two people, renters in there, and they pay you rent every month. And then you pay that back over 25 years, and then you have something. But through that time, the loan on your building goes down, and you can actually have a financial statement. You got $3,000 worth of real estate sitting there, and so I think learning how that works, as far as rental properties, I think it kind of dawned on me, and I got a little bit of knowledge of how you borrow money and how you how you pay it back and how you keep your credit up. And I think that was a big move in my life, really. You know, I probably didn't have a good week of sleep until I was about 35 years old, but I think I enjoyed the working, and I was able to have a little money and make a little money, and I thought I was progressing. And so, but I think if looking back now, the fact that I had to work so hard when I was a kid, probably I didn't mind it then, and I never did mind. I just assumed that's part of life. My father he worked 10 hours a day and sometimes 12 a day for 6 days a week, in the coal business. And so, he coal miner, and I think I just expected that was the way life was. So I believe that probably helped me most. When I was back in the 80s, I got a real estate license, and I learned a little bit about real estate. So there's a lady that owned the farm here in town. It was about 40 acres, and so I decided, man, I want to buy that 40 acres. Well, I never really thought about borrowing a multi-million-dollar loan, So I went up on her door and I knocked on the door, and she yelled out, there's a screen door, and she yelled out and said, "If you're a real estate person, get off my porch." So I said, "Oh, okay." So I left and I went down the street and I bought a big box of candy and some flowers, and I came back and knocked on the door, and she let me in. And on her mantle was a big glass fish bowl. In the old days, people kept goldfish, but she had it half full of real estate cards. Real estate agents, left her card. And so I knew what I was up against then. So I told her I wanted to talk to her about that, and she took me on her back porch, and we sat there, and pretty hot sun, and I'm sitting there, and we talked for a while. And I got up and said, "Well, can I come back to see you tomorrow?" Yeah. I think she kind of trusted me a little bit, liked me, and so she said, "Yeah, you can come back tomorrow." So I come back the next day, and I'd had a lot of experience with elderly people, and I knew they like you to dress nice. But I sat there for a month or so going on, and then one day I said, "Mrs. Pugh, I want to buy your farm." And she said, "Well, how much you want to give me for it?" And I said, "Ma'am, I want to know what it's worth. You tell me." And she threw out $2 million, which was at the time was the highest price per acre for any farmer ever sold in Lexington that I could find. So I said, "Well, I'll take it. I'll bring you a contract." Well, then I had to figure out how I was going to pay for it. So I took it to the bank, and I'm trying to work through the deal. And lo and behold, in about 3 weeks, I got an offer on it for $4 million out of a group out of St. Louis that was out building apartment houses. So I made a deal with them, and I kept some of the land on the front, which I ended up putting a strip center and some other couple businesses on it. And I closed on that deal and made a cool $2 million, and it was totally luck, because somebody upstairs was watching over a dumb guy like me. And so I kind of fell into that. But I think without question that gave me a lot of money and at the time. And I was probably making $8,000 or $9,000 a year teaching, and then whatever else I was hustling on. So that was my leg up. I would advise a young person to choose the field that they like. I think to be successful, you have to like what you're doing. I think you need to find something in that field that you can understand and be highly knowledgeable of. And if you do that and you have the wherewithal to stay with it and not give up, I think that the knowledge of being better at one thing than anybody else will get you there.